Right. I think we are all set to go. I have a wonderful guest on today's podcast episode. Her name is Mariana, and she has been a wonderful, wonderful person that I have just gotten to know a little bit, and so excited about what she does with her business, Brand Magnetic. I have sat through her masterclass. I have got to talk with her one on one and just love that she's into telling the story of who you are using visuals. So, thank you so much, Mariana, for being a guest today.
Yeah, lovely to be here, Laura. Thanks for that awesome intro.
You're welcome. Um, I really built my podcast to be a place for giving a lot of information because I want to give a lot of value. And I know that's something that you value as well, with just helping people understand what really makes their brand magnetic. And it's that storytelling piece, and we can really convey who we are. And I love that the work you do is building those brand trailers, those brand videos, so that people can get to know, like, and trust us a lot faster than just seeing snippets on social media and
hmm
having to compile that over a long period of time. So I think the work you do is really beautiful. And I just want you to kind of share your story, how you got into this, how you learned about this and built it into the business you have now.
Yeah, for sure. So my background is in documentary filmmaking. I was a journalist, documentary filmmaker in four different continents all over the world. Just, everything from squishy sea cucumbers in Haiti to Bedouin tents in the Middle East and Afghanistan and all these other places. So that was my whole life and career for about 15 years. And so I've always been really driven by beautiful, emotional, personal storytelling. That's been I could never believe that I was getting paid to do this. I loved the excuse that I had to be able to build relationships with people, to get to know who they are. And in that process, I had to build trust really fast. They had to trust me that I was going to be a good steward of their story. This is also why I loved storytelling, in documentary form without using a lot of narration. I loved just using what people were sharing with me. And then, illustrating that creatively, taking somebody along on the journey. And what I really love about documentaries is that you get to see the world through somebody else's eyes. You get to feel and experience life in a completely different way than what might be your situation. And it really opens up your eyes to see the world differently and to be open about the perspective that you have on something. That's what drew me to documentary filmmaking. Now,
Mm.
a couple years, 15 years into it, I had to kind of have a come to Jesus moment where I realized I was like, well, I love doing this, but I've always loved business as well. I've kind of been an entrepreneur my whole life, but closeted, never had my own business.
Mhm.
Um, Although to be fair, I've always like sold things, or I've always found a way to make money, or always had business ideas, but because I was a filmmaker, I just didn't have a place to sort of execute on those ideas. And I just came to a point in my life where it was a little bit of, if not now, when. I
Mhm.
could continue this career as a documentary filmmaker, or I could explore this thing that I've always had inside of me. And it was at that moment that I decided, you know what? Again, if not now, when. It sounds like a crazy thing to do, but it's even crazier not to do it. And so it was at that moment that I started looking into the online business world and realizing that, wow, I'm meeting such great people, such amazing people, but we don't see the side of them when we're
Mhm.
just consuming them or consuming their content, opening their emails or not opening their emails. Either way, we're not really seeing the side of these people that I'm meeting. Why aren't they telling their story? Why are they doing what I call hiding behind providing value? And so it was just a very easy sort of connect the dots in my mind. I love doing this. This is so powerful. I had a documentary that was played in Congress, for example, and that affected lawmaking. I
Mhm.
there's no way that you can deny how powerful an emotional connection can be. And so it to me, it just felt like a no-brainer. Like, let me bring this amazing tool that nobody is using, or very few people are using, or using it in a very sort of discreet or limited way. why don't we just bring it full force into the online world and help people really be known for who they are, create an emotional connection with their audience, make them stand out. There's so many amazing benefits to doing this from a business perspective, but also just from a personal connection perspective. We're serving
Yeah.
our audiences so much better when we create that emotional connection with them and that they can know who we are behind this offer, behind the service. So it was kind of a no-brainer to start Brand Magnetic, given all of that. And I've been having so much fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you really just took something that you were very talented with and you loved doing, and you kind of hit that pivot moment of like, I could be more aligned with what I'm doing if I branch out and really help people in this way, kind of build their own documentaries. And
Hmm.
I totally agree with what you're talking about when it comes to, this past 2 years that I've really dove into entrepreneurship and working in the online space and meeting people. You kind of get a small sense of who they are just from their content or their social media.
Hmm.
But sometimes I feel like when you get that one-on-one conversation with them, you book that coffee chat, or you see them kind of in action in a group
Yeah,
setting or something, you're like,
makes a world of difference.
wow, yeah, it does. It makes a world of difference. And it's time consuming to sit there and to book so many one-on-one sessions. And the first part of last year, I did a bunch of those. Like, there were weeks where I would have anywhere from like 4 to 10 calls in a week, and they would be either group chats, they would be one-on-one chats, and I'm just like, I love talking to people, but at the same time, I'm like, by the time I'm done with a couple conversations, I'm drained. I'm like, I can't get anything else done the rest of the day, and I have creative work I need to do with
Hmm.
design and helping my clients. So I had to kind of scale back on that, but I still love to be able to connect with people, and I love that you help others create that little video that really dives deep into who they are, connects on that emotional level,
Yeah.
and kind of tells their story. And I like that you do it in a way where it's not pitching, you're not
Yeah.
selling your offer,
Mm-hmm.
you're just telling them about you. And in with the rise of technology and all the things that we have going on, there some of that has been lost. I think just that genuine connection.
Oh,
And
yeah.
especially in the online space, it's not like you just walk in a store, you see someone and you kind of connect personally. You're viewing things through a screen. So in a sense, it's like a virtual reality. You're like, this doesn't really feel real because I'm not making that connection. But when you provide that video and you're seeing them face to face and you're kind of getting a sense of who they are, you're able to make that connection. I mean, we all the time will go see a movie about fictional characters and
Yeah.
we feel like we make a connection with them. I'm like, the
Right.
Lord of the Rings trilogy that came out, I'm like, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm a part of the Hobbit family. It's like you build that connection because they do so well with conveying the emotion and telling the story. And I like that you really help pull those pieces together for people who are, serving others. They're in a service-based business, or maybe they're in a product-based business, but it's like, here's the real me behind what you have seen so far. So, kind of tell a little bit about maybe kind of how you put together and structure doing that for your clients.
Yeah, for sure. So it probably would make more sense for me to talk about my signature service where we work
Yeah.
a bit more closely with folks. So the first step, Laura, is really coming from a place of understanding your audience in and out. I should actually preface this by saying there's a lot of what I'm going to say right now that you, as a business owner, have probably heard before. And so the concepts are very similar in that this is not, I'm not reinventing human connection or reinventing the wheel. It's just really understanding how all of these principles that we know are good for copy, we know are good for marketing, they also apply when you're telling your story. So you work your way backwards from understanding exactly how your audience needs to feel when they're ready to buy from you. So think of it like this: when they first come into your universe, typically I call them Skeptic Sam. They are very, unless they have a really big pain point and they're reaching out to you being like, you're my angel, you're the person I've been waiting for. Unless that's the case, they will typically follow you on social media or get on your email list and observe you and sort of, you mentioned just sort of piece all of these little pieces together of understanding what you're about. And the way they do that is in their own time and in their own space. Mike Kim, who wrote, what is the name of his book? I have it right here. Hold on. Oh man, I'm totally blanking on the name of this book. It has the word brand in it, it has the word you in it, but I just bought a different book with a similar title. So the titles are getting mixed in my head. But Mike Kim talks about the idea that people are consuming you in their own time and in their own space. So for the most part, that's what they want to do. They just want to it's kind of when you walk into a clothes store and you don't necessarily want the salesperson to be like, how can I help you? Look at this, look at this, look at that. You're kind of like, I
Mhm.
just want to browse. I want to get a feel. And so that is the first moment that they come into your universe typically. And then you're building that trust, that know, like, and trust that takes forever, it takes several months typically of
Mhm.
being consistent about showing up until they get to the point where they're finally like, okay, she's speaking to my soul. I trust her at this point, or him. And now I'm ready to at least either ask questions or buy outright, right? The golden trust, the holy grail of trust that we finally reached. So, what I do with my clients is really understanding what trust looks like for their audience. Trust is kind of a blanket word. It's a little an umbrella. I wouldn't say generic, but it's kind of an umbrella term. And
Mhm.
for each audience, for each customer, for each service, for each offer, trust looks a little bit differently. And so it's really understanding what the facets of trust are and then working our way backwards to see which parts of our story. So when you tell your brand story, it's not just your origin story. It's not just whatever random events that you think might be useful or might be interesting. There's a science, there's a framework, and it's really finding the stories and the parts of those stories that will create that emotional resonance, that what that trust looks like, the color and the shape and the feel of that trust is what we're trying to get to at the end of a brand video. And so that is in a nutshell what we do. And then obviously more specifically, there's kind of a way to think about your story, there's a way to tell it in terms of what kind of story do you have. There's an overcome story, there's a passion story, there's using language that you would use, but ideally language that your audience definitely uses, that you are okay with. You don't ever
Mhm.
want to say something that you would, that doesn't sound like you. But if you're able to kind of use terms that resonate with your audience, like, yes, we capitalize on those, which again is just sort of a good principle of copy in general. And
Mhm.
so you want your audience to feel at the end of your brand video that feeling of trust, but also like, she gets me, he gets me, like, this is my person, we're it, this is happening, there's a vibe here, there's a connection. um
Mhm.
Again, that's just another way of looking at trust, is just this feeling of like, oh, wow, relief, like this is the
Yeah.
person I need to go with.
Yeah. So in essence, like you really become that go-to person that they're like, oh, if I need this or when I need this, I know exactly who I'm going to because I
There's no
trust that
doubt.
they'll do a good job with it. Like
Mhm.
we get that vibe, you
Yes,
know?
and it's also like, thank you. Thank you
Hmm.
for taking the heavy burden of me having to consume you for months and months and months to get a sense of who you are. And,
Yeah.
the opposite is true also. If you're not my person, then thank you, because now maybe you're good for somebody that I'm thinking of, but you're not exactly who I'm looking for. And
Hmm.
so, I just experienced this recently because it's somebody that I know, her program in theory might be something that I'm looking for. And I've just kind of consumed her little by little. I've like watched her post, I've read her
Hmm.
emails, sort of been in different Zoom rooms with this person. And I ended up on a webinar. And sure enough, during that webinar, I was like, you know what? I think she's probably great, but she's not who I'm looking for, and I
Yeah.
feel like had I watched the brand video where I would have gotten to know more of her personality, more of her values, I would have probably more quickly gotten to that point. It wouldn't mean that I wouldn't stop following her. There's no, in this case, there isn't a sense of we are opposites, or we contradict each other in values.
Hmm.
No, it's just different, right? It's a
Yeah.
different personality. It's not the personality that I'm looking for in this kind of service. And that's okay. But she might be perfect for a friend of mine. And so for me, it took maybe 3 months of just sort of consuming her little bits here and there, and then attending a webinar. And then it was at that point I was like, you know what, that I think she's awesome, but not for me. And so
Yeah.
it really is helping your audience know who you are right away. And really the superpower, Laura, is in addition to having this sort of like, could we be a good fit? Are you my person? Are you definitely not my person? It's also every single touch point that comes afterwards. Every time we spend energy into writing a great email, into showing up on social media, into going live, into having whatever sort of appearance or touch point that we have with our audience, that's going to be viewed through the lens of those emotions that we created with the brand video. So to me, that's the superpower, where you're like amplifying every single touch point, because, to your point, you've had all these coffee chats. And so every time you hear from that person, let's say you're on their email list or you follow them on social, you're going to remember that connection. And so it's essentially replicating that at scale in a really memorable, tight way. I mean, there's something to be said about the power of storytelling when it's crafted, with a lot of intention. Obviously, conversation is great, but if you, it's, if there's, it's kind of like, I could throw a bunch of bricks together and build a house, or I could have like really amazing architecture where as soon as you walk in, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
never going to forget this house. What an amazing experience. They're both
Yeah.
houses, but
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly. And I like that you touched on the fact that once you have this video, everything you do on top of that is just creating more touch points, creating more, validity to what it is that you do, how you can connect with them. So it's reiterating a lot of things. And I think one thing that you kind of mentioned was, you know, yes, we can sort of build that in a one-to-one, but like when it's really intentionally crafted, we know we're getting the message across that we really want to give. Because like I told you about the different coffee chats and things that I've been a part of, you can get in some where like you vibe really good and you go deep into a topic or different things, and you're like talking about everything from kids to family to business to
right.
whatever. And then you get on some chats and you're just like, okay, we each told each other what we do and kind of about our services. And it's like, is there any way I could support you? And you're like, this was so surface level. Like,
Yeah.
I really did not feel that connection. And, you might still get some information from them, you might still see them, but you're like, that emotional, deeper connection never came. And,
Mm-hmm.
and you've missed out on that, which maybe you're not the right fit for them. They're not the right fit for you. And I think that's another great thing that you mentioned, which is, this video, this connection point is a great way to find out sooner who your ideal people are. Because
Mm-hmm.
the ideal people are going to be the ones that are going to be coming through to ask you those questions and want to get to know you more,
Yeah.
or reach out to you like, oh my goodness, like that just blew my mind, you're like the perfect person for me. It's like we want them kind of knocking on the door after that, like, can I work with you, you're so awesome. And kind of weeding out those that are like, oh, I like her but she's not for me, or I like him but we
Which
don't
is
just.
totally great.
Yeah, it's like they're great. I might share this video with somebody else that I think they would be a fantastic fit for. And that's even another thing too, is that once this is created and it's out there, you have the ability to use it in so many different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
people can easily be like, oh yeah, hey, I checked out this person. Go watch his or her video,
Yeah.
and go from there and be like, okay, people can refer me simply by using this video.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you offer that as a service. And I would love for you to kind of just share a little bit more about your signature program, because I really think that it would be a very valuable service for people to look into when they're in a space and they're having to do a lot of that lead generation, and they're having to kind of weed out people through discovery calls and stuff and
Oh my
taking up
gosh. Yeah.
a lot of that time. This
Yeah.
will be a really great option for them.
Yeah, it's a really great point. So Laura, one of the pain points that we address with the brand video is exactly that. The idea that it takes so long to build that trust, that, if somebody is going to eventually become a client, typically what that means is like several emails back and forth, several Zoom calls. There's a lot of questions that they're trying to build that rapport, or you're trying to build that rapport over so many different interactions, and you're personal time is not scalable, right? Unless you're doing a one-to-many selling from stage. And
Yeah.
that's not personal, right? But it's in person, but it's not one-on-one. And so I've had clients tell me that once they installed their brand video, that's, I call it install, because it's almost like it's a conversion tool that you're
Mhm.
installing into your business. And so once they've put their brand video out there in these key locations, in their own words, they're saying to me, we're going from having to have 5 emails back and forth and then jumping on a call. And at the call, where, I'm having to sort of introduce myself and create that rapport. And she's like, we just go directly to the call. And at the call, they already know who I am. And so we're going so much faster into whether the service is a fit, whether what are the sort of particulars that might be holding them back, and how can I address those very head on. And so to me, that is like an incredible testament to how effective this is. I also tell the story that's not my story, but I read it in a book called The Visual Sale. It's of this business that sold pools. And there was a salesman named John, I believe his name is, let's just go with that. And so John, the salesman, would obviously like show up at, somebody would call, book an appointment, they would show up at your house, and John would sell you a pool, kind of suss out your backyard, whatever. And so John decided to create a very prototypical, if you will, brand video, a little video about himself that he would include in the signature of his emails, which, by the way, is one of the places where I recommend your brand video should live. And so what happened was, when he now started showing up at people's houses to talk to them about their pool, as soon as he opened the door, they're like, hey, John, like they already knew him, and it's just that beautiful feeling of, I don't have to start from scratch. I don't like, we're compressing time. We are really in the business of, why are we making ourselves work so much harder to get our clients to trust us and to show them who we are, and establish that connection. And so my signature service, we work on your story. That is like the biggest part of it, is understanding exactly what parts of the story you should tell. How are we going to phrase it? So we come into essentially writing a script, and then we think of the visuals that should be very creative, very non-literal. They are emotional drivers in your brand video. They're not just simply illustrating what you're saying. They're very much bringing what I call a narrative transportation, which is when you talked about watching a movie and sort of being transported by those emotions. That's exactly what we're recreating in 2 to 4 minutes. And the visuals are a big player in that. So we're looking for creative visuals that really speak to our emotions and kind of create that emotional state. And once we have that all crafted in a script, we essentially hire a very small team, a cinematographer that's going to come film with you for a day. And then after that, our team takes that footage and creates that brand video for you. So it's, again, the bulk of the sort of work together is getting to that place where we have the roadmap for us. And then after that, it's just executing on that, which is great and super fun. And the end result has been awesome.
Yeah, I've definitely loved watching the brand videos that you share from some of your clients, and like they're just so beautifully put together. And you have, I'm sure, the talent for helping us piece together that story. Like you said, you have a framework for what elements you're going to bring forward and what things you're going to talk about. And um, I love just getting that deeper in idea of who people are in a short amount of time. And I think that's one thing about me, is I like to go deeper in connections and in relationships. I like to I'm one of those where I like to get to start to finish faster. And that's just me. I'm quick to get started and I'm quick to finish. I want to get to the bottom of things and learn things a little bit faster than the traditional learning and education timeline sometimes. So I know for me, as a potential client to somebody, I want to get to know you really fast, like really quick, because I want to be able to make my decision on that. Whereas, I know a lot of different people have different ways of going about it. They may want to watch your brand video 6 or 7 times just to be sure. I might watch it once and be like, yes or no,
right.
But I love that you explained how you go about doing that, because you in essence just kind of made your own little brand video of your service. Here's me painting the picture for you of what we do. So now anybody that's thinking about that's like, oh, okay, that's not too hard. I'm going to have conversations with her and really dig deep into my story. And then I'm going to have a day of filming. And then she's going to build this beautiful video for me and be like, here you go. Here's your brand video. Let's see how this works for you, and builds more connections and makes that conversion time shorter in the long run. And, you know, you even go to the step of letting people know where is the best place to use
Oh yeah.
their brand video. You know, I think that's even another key thing that you add with your level of service, of just not just handing it to them, you know.
Yeah,
That's
no,
even with
it behooves, it's great for me when it works great for them. Obviously, I'm
mhm,
super happy for them, but it's also, you know, straight up forward transparency. It's great for my business when I can get amazing results for everyone.
yeah.
Laura, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I actually have a hard out at 11:30 because I have a different
Oh, you're
focus.
fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. Thank
No,
you
we have like
so
1 minute to
much.
go.
Yeah, for being on here, and I'll have all of your links in the show notes for sure.
Okay. Do you want me to kind of sign out and tell people where they can find me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Um, yeah, this was really great. So folks can find me at brandmagnetic.com, and they can also connect with me on Instagram. I'm super reachable at brandmagnetic. DM me, let me know who you are. I love to sort of hear different stories and connect with folks.
All right. Thank you so much, Mariana.
Thank you, Laura. This was awesome.